Hello everyone, in this week's video we're going to try to find my anti-art style. A while back there was an art challenge going around where artists would try to draw in a style that is opposite of how they usually draw, and they would call this their anti-style. Well, my brain randomly remembered about this challenge and I thought it would be fun to try for myself, plus I've been in the mood to try some new things. So to start, I'm going to list characteristics of my art and try to list opposites of those characteristics. Like my art is often on the soft side, so the opposite would be harsh. I was sitting for a while thinking about my art and writing things down as I thought of them. Also for this, I'm only considering my illustrative style, not things like my chibi elf style, chibi style, semi-realistic style, or my webcomic style. That makes it sound like I have a lot of styles, but they're all just kind of subtly different from each other. My chibi elf style being the most different. Now, one thing that is a bit of a problem is that for some things I feel like my style is kind of in the middle. Like my character's proportions are kind of semi-realistic. They could be more realistic, but they could also be more stylized. In this case, I thought it'd be more fun to try to push the stylization instead of going more realistic. The shading of my illustrations often have a lot of soft shadows, gradients, and are fully rendered, so the opposite would be flat colors. Then for the last one, I feel like my art is often on the safe side, like I won't try to push proportions or perspective too much. So for this, I want to try to push things a bit more. Okay, so here's my list, and now I'm going to try to make a style that fits this. The part I'm most nervous about is the small dead eyes. I love big shiny eyes so much, so it's going to be weird not adding those. To start, I'm going to draw how I kind of usually proportion my characters. Honestly, this looks a bit wonky, but it doesn't really matter. It's just to help get the point across. But for this anti-style, I need to stylize things more. I'm going to try to simplify the shapes as much as I can and make things less realistic. I also like the idea of making the hands and feet larger than they should be, kind of like in the early Kingdom Hearts games. I always think it's an interesting style choice and I wanted to give it a try. So for my faces, I usually draw the eyes very big, kind of like this. But the style needs to have smaller eyes. Placing the small eyes towards the upper part of the head looks kind of odd, so I opted to put them lower on the head. This way the character still looks kind of cute and it's really stylized. This first attempt kind of just looks like a weird chibi. I'm not a huge fan of it. I tried drawing just a head in this sort of style, and yeah, I don't really like it. Even though I'm drawing in an anti-style, I still want to try to find a way to like it, even if it's really different from what I usually do. So let's try to play around with the face proportions a bit more. This is kind of how I usually draw a face in my default style. Like I briefly said, I do also have my chibi elf style and my more semi-realistic style and chibi style. But for today, we are only focusing on doing something different from my default style. Like we saw on the list, my style is often on the softer side, so I'm going to try to make the head more pointy and sharp. It needs to be harsher. I'm really trying to make these smaller eyes work. Also, I'm not adding shinies because it's something I really like, so I'm not going to add those. I'm just keeping them as black circles. A lot of times I make the eyes really detailed, so I'm trying to make them really simple. I thought maybe making the mouth really wide would help the style look different. But I'm going to be honest, this character's kind of giving off gremlin energy or something. I don't know, it just looks weird. Since the eyes are smaller, I thought maybe making the eyelashes thicker would help. Plus, it makes things more bold. I also tried drawing a side view version, but yeah, I didn't like that much either. Honestly, I was starting to feel like I wasn't going to be able to make something I like, and I was considering scrapping this video idea. But I decided to try to remove pressure and just start sketching something. I was trying to be loose and let my movements flow a bit more without thinking too much. And this sketch I drew doesn't look too much different from other things I was drawing, but it sparked some inspiration in me, and this is when things started to take a turn. Things I liked about this sketch was the pointy cheek, the thicker lower eyelash lines, and I noticed that maybe the characters were looking weird because I was placing the eyebrows really low. So I'm going to try placing them higher on the head. Now for this attempt, I'm going to include the pointy cheeks. Once again, I'm trying to keep things sharper instead of soft. I also included the thick lower eyelashes. I feel like this helps give the eyes a more different look from my usual eyes, since I usually make the top line be thicker and have eyelashes. But now I'm making the lower be thicker and have eyelashes. And I do have to say, I like the face proportions a lot more by moving the eyebrows higher on the head. It makes the face feel less squished and feel more balanced. Also, I'm kind of drawing the hair like how I draw Doris's hair. I figured since Doris is a character that is very much my style, she would be a good test subject for the Auntie style. Her hair is usually very round, but I'm trying to make things more angular and sharp. I'm trying to avoid curving lines. Oh, also, I kept not liking the noses in the first attempts, so I thought I would try to just not add a nose. This makes things kind of similar to my chibi elf style, but it's okay, we're not trying to do the opposite of that. And no nose is the opposite of having a nose, so I think it's okay. So now I have facial proportions that I'm liking, and now I need the body. Earlier I drew this kind of weird chibi thing, and I didn't like it very much. It felt too basic having the characters be chibi-like in style, and that gave me the idea to instead make the characters be really lanky and long, and I think I quite liked this direction. Since I'm going for something that is stylized, I'm keeping the shapes as simple as possible. Instead of adding the subtle curves to the limbs like I usually do, I'm keeping my lines straight and simple. I still like the idea of the larger hands and feet, so I did keep those. Plus, it helps balance the proportions. If I gave the character small hands and feet, it makes the head feel very large and the body feel kind of small and not very substantial, I suppose. But by making the hands and feet larger, it adds some balance, or at least I hope it does. I don't really know. The other day, my sister was like, "Hey Becca, you should make a video on character design." And I was like, why would I make a video on character design? Have you seen my characters? They're so basic. But yeah, I'm trying to find a good flow and balance for the proportions. Now that I have a basic understanding of what I want for this anti-style, I wanted to try putting it in action. So I found some panels of Doris from my webcomic, and I'm going to sketch them in this style. Also, these panels are from a chapter that I've not released yet, so this is minor spoilers for the next chapter, sorry about that. I had to use these panels because I wanted newer panels of Doris, so it's a better comparison of styles. And I haven't had to draw Doris a ton in the most recent chapters, so this was the most recent stuff I had of Doris. Anyways, this first sketch is a redraw of this panel, and it kind of ended up being a redraw of both panels. I kind of exaggerated the expression because, like I said, I wanted to try to push the boundaries with the style. But yeah, like I said, it did end up feeling like a mashup between these two panels. Also, just for context, it would have been a bit weird for Doris to look this shocked in the comic. It would have been a bit much. So yeah, but I decided to push it more since I'm just playing around with the style. I chose to redraw this panel so we can see a bit more of the body and also try drawing the face in a 3/4 view. I know I could have just drawn the first front view and side view and called it good when it came to experimenting with the style, but I really wanted to try to develop this anti-style a bit. I wanted to try it out in different poses and with different expressions to see if I could get it to work for different scenarios. I didn't want to just draw one illustration in a different style and call it good. I really wanted to try to experiment with it. Because I feel like that's kind of the whole fun part about it, is trying to draw a different style and also see if I can make it work in different ways. Lastly, for this sketching session, I found this sketch I did of Doris in a previous video. I chose this one because I wanted to try redrawing a full body sketch in this style. A lot of times when we think of style, we think about character traits. But style can apply to all parts of drawing. Like, for the clothes I usually draw, they are more realistically proportioned, and I try to capture the subtle folds and shapes. However, in this case, I'm simplifying my shapes. I'm trying to be more decisive with my lines and shapes, and I'm also making them a bit more sharp. I also stylize the proportions of the clothes. I make the collar and buttons much larger and make the skirt puff out more. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to style. Don't only think about how you can stylize the characters, consider other objects as well. One thing I was a bit scared of when it came to this style is that it would have only one kind of face type. Like, all the faces would have these aloof or bored looking eyes. So I decided to play around with capturing different personalities in this style. First, we have the kind of default face I've been drawing. It's kind of close to how I often draw Brayson, I suppose. For this one, I wanted to try something a bit more similar to Doris, something a little bit more round and friendly feeling. This one is supposed to feel more sassy, so I make the corner of the eyes turn upwards. A part of me really wanted to break my rule and add eyelashes to the top, but I decided to stick with just adding them to the bottom. I wanted to try doing something on the cutesy side, and to do that, it felt like I needed to get rid of the eyelash lines and just do circles. I feel like this one doesn't really fit in with the style, so I probably wouldn't use it. Also, I added shinies and we're not supposed to do that. Then we have one that's kind of scared and also one that's a bit angry. So yeah, it seems like there is room to capture different facial features and expressions, so that's good. I was worried everyone would always look dead inside. Now that I'm feeling more comfortable with this anti-style, I wanted to try drawing something more finished like an illustration. But before we do, it's time for a mini tablet review. This is the Ugee U1200 display drawing tablet. It has an 11.9-inch display, making it a nice size for on-the-go use or for small workspaces. In the box along with the tablet, you receive power cords, drawing glove, nib remover and extra nibs, cleaning cloth, and of course the pen. The pen is very thin. Most tablet pens I see are on the thicker side, so I found this to be really interesting. The pen features 2 express buttons and has a really nifty eraser function on the end. Not all pens get this feature, so I think it's really nice that this is included. Setting up the tablet was super easy. I just went onto the Ugee website to download the drivers, installed them, plugged in the tablet, and it was ready to go. Also, you do need to use the tablet with a computer, but you can also use it with your phone, which I think is really cool. You just need a USB-C to USB-C 3.1 cable. I didn't get to test out using this tablet with my phone, but I do think it's a really cool feature, especially if you don't have a PC. As you can see, I am using a stand with the tablet. This is not provided. I'm just using a stand that I use with my main tablet. But anyways, let's talk about my drawing experience with this tablet. One thing I really like about the U1200 is the texture that is applied to the screen. It is a matte finish and has a slight texture to it. This mimics the feeling of paper, and I do really like the feel of it. It feels very natural. The tablet is also really responsive with 8,192 levels of pressure sensitivity. The pen is able to detect changes in pressure very smoothly. One critique I do have is that there is some latency. What I draw lags behind the pen just a little bit. It's not super noticeable. If I slow down the footage, you can more easily see what I'm talking about. But overall, my time with the tablet was really good, and the slight latency didn't get in the way at all. I was very easily able to draw my character Doris. It works really well, and it's a nice size if you're on the go a lot or don't have a ton of desk space. I don't have much desk space in my room, so this tablet's a really nice fit for using in my room. So yeah, I give this tablet 5 stars. My experience with the Ugee U1200 was very nice, and if you want to check it out for yourself, there's links in the description. Okay, now let's get back to the video. Once again, Doris will be my test subject for this. I didn't really know what I wanted to draw, I just knew it needed to be in this different style. I thought maybe a pose of Doris skipping or walking around could be kind of cute, so I was going with that. Because these characters are really simple shapes, it's kind of easier to draw them in different views and kind of push the perspective. In this case, I'm drawing Doris as if we are looking up at her. I also wanted to push things by having the hand in front be really large and the hand in back get really small because it's away from us. Things weren't feeling super dynamic with this first sketch, so I tried to push a bit more with my cleanup. I free transformed my sketch to help push the perspective a bit more. I made it get smaller towards the top and wider towards the bottom. This can be an easy trick to do if you want to convey the perspective a bit more with your pose. So in the first sketch, your torso is facing the front, but to help push the pose, I decided to turn the torso. This gives the torso a bit more movement. Also, to make things a bit more fun, I added a slight curve to the front leg and made the back leg go more behind the front leg. I also really tried to push that thing with the hands of one being larger and one being smaller. It was really fun to draw with these more simple shapes. They're a lot easier to understand than what I usually do for drawing. I also feel like it was a good exercise because I was able to experiment with the shapes and try to capture motion, and it feels easier to do because the shapes are simpler. So I really enjoyed working with it. So I did really like this sketch. I thought it was really cute, but it felt too much like my normal stuff, I guess. It was giving off that happy, cute vibe that I often see in my illustrations. And since this is supposed to be an anti-style, it felt like I needed to go with something not happy and cute. Oh, also, I did do some more studies with some of my other characters. We are running low on time, so I won't really talk about them, but I had a lot of fun doing them, especially the ones with Brayson. Those were a lot of fun to do. But anyways, for the second idea for the illustration, instead of happy cute Doris, we need edgy emo Doris. To capture this mood, I'm going to go with a slouchy sitting pose. Once again, it was pretty easy to draw since the shapes are so simple. Also, since the proportions are more stylized, I feel like I can kind of get away with things a bit more. Like if the legs seem kind of long, that's okay because they're supposed to be. And if the proportions are maybe a little bit off, it doesn't matter too much because everything's kind of funky. I don't know, I just felt like I could cheat things a bit more with this. I did kind of find this whole thing to be freeing in a way. I feel like sometimes maybe I confine myself to my style and what I usually do. I can be really systematic or maybe kind of stuck in my ways. So it was fun doing something very different. I did have to stick with what's the opposite of what I usually do, and that was a challenge we'll talk a bit more about in a moment. But drawing in a way that's so different was fun. And I do know I'll draw in different styles for things like turning myself into video game characters. But for that I have to stay with the style of the game. I don't get to experiment all that much. But with this challenge I do have to stick with things that are different, but it allows for a lot of trial and error and trying different things. And I found the process to be really fun. Like the line art process was really different. A lot of times I prefer to keep my line art more subtle and clean. But with this I needed to be more bold, thick, and messy. It was a bit tricky because I was kind of trying to find a balance between messy and clean. I didn't want it to be too clean like usual, but I didn't want it to be too messy that it didn't feel like line art anymore. So to help have this balance, I wouldn't go back and clean up my lines. I would kind of just let them be. I would also add extra little lines to some areas, like around the filled areas, like under the neck, for example. I would add the little lines to the black filled areas. That's another thing I was trying to do. I was trying to make the line variation in my lines be more obvious. And since I won't be rendering the picture a ton, I try to add more shading with my line art. Another thing that was fun is being more decisive with the shapes and drawing things kind of chunky. Like I said, a lot of times my shapes are more subtle in curves and I'm defining the small details. However, now I'm trying to use more confident lines. I also try to have a balance of straight and curved lines. Like if a shape had a straight line on one side, I would make the line be more curved on the other side to help things feel dynamic. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it makes the shapes feel nice. By having a straight line and a curved line on opposing sides of a shape, it just makes it feel more interesting, I suppose. So like I mentioned, one challenging thing of doing this is that it is the opposite of what I usually do. And this also kind of means doing the opposite of what I like. And like I said, I do like where I was able to bring this anti-style. But does that mean it's my preferred style or that I absolutely love it? No, it does not. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think it has its own charm and it is a lot of fun to draw in this style. That being said, there is a reason my default style is the way it is. It's because it's made of things that I like. I really like big shiny eyes. I love to shade and render pictures. I love using bright colors and lots of them. And I do feel like that is one thing about this anti-style that I don't like, and it's the coloring or rendering. I did my best to try to keep things muted and simple. I only added some cell shading and simple white highlights. I made the highlights white to help them feel bold and to kind of make things pop even though I'm using really muted colors. But the tricky part is that I can't tell if I don't like it because it's not good or because it's different from the usual. Obviously my style is made up of what I like, so trying to do something that's the opposite of what I like makes things tricky because like I said, I can't tell if I don't like it because it's bad or because it's different. So will I be replacing my normal style with this? No, I will not, because I do like my style. It's something I've developed over many years, and it's always slightly changing and transforming to my tastes and how I change. But I don't know if I'll ever drastically change styles to something like this. That being said, I did find this super fun. It was great to try new things, and I may try playing around with the style some more. I do feel like the rendering and shading for the style could use some work. I want to try some different things with it. Maybe instead of muted colors, I would try super bright colors. I feel like I'm often in the middle ground when it comes to bright colors. Like they're bright, but not too bright in a lot of cases. So maybe I could try using like highlighter colors. So yeah, I won't be changing my style to this style anytime soon. but I do feel like I learned a lot from doing this and did learn some different things that I like and want to try in my current style. So I do feel like I learned a lot from this experimentation. But anyways, here's all the different sketches I did for finding my anti-style. I highly recommend giving this a try. It's a lot of fun. And let me know if you'd like to see me do this again. I think maybe it would be fun to try to push things in the opposite way, like take my style to the extreme, super big shiny eyes, super fluffy hair, and super mega colorful. That could be a lot of fun. I wonder what I would call that style. If you have ideas, you can let me know down in the comments. But before we end, I want to thank my super amazing patrons and YouTube members for their support. It means so much to me. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!